Hello, I'm Roisin Hastie with the BBC News. The United States has accused the Kremlin of directly managing the forced relocation of Ukrainian citizens into Russia. The State Department said Moscow had drawn up lists of people deemed a threat to its control. Russia's UN ambassador described the accusations as a new milestone in disinformation. Here's our UN correspondent, Neda Tawfik.
Washington's ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said U.S. intelligence had information that officials from Russia's presidential administration were overseeing and coordinating filtration operations, even providing a list of Ukrainians to be targeted. She cited estimates that up to 1.6 million Ukrainian citizens had been forcibly deported from their homes to Russia, often to isolated regions in the Far East, including thousands of children, some separated from their families and others taken from orphanages before being put up for adoption in Russia.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainian military forces have recaptured several settlements in their counter-offensive against Russian troops near the northeastern city of Kharkiv. In his nightly video address, Mr. Zelensky called the development good news. He didn't name the areas that had been retaken, saying now wasn't the time. The Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro's dismissed opinion polls suggesting that he will lose next month's election are a lie. In a speech in Brasilia to mark 200 years since independence, Mr. Bolsonaro described the party led by his challenger Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva as evil.
Sabemos que temos pela frente. We know
that we have a fight between good and evil ahead of us. The evil that lasted for 14 years in our country, that almost broke our homeland and now wants to come back to the crime scene. They won't. The people are by our side. The people are on the side of good. The people know what they want.
Mr. Bolsonaro's comments have renewed concerns that he will not accept the results if he loses the election in October. Families of some of the victims killed in a stabbing spree in Western Canada have been speaking publicly for the first time about what happened. The brother and husband of one of the 10 victims told a news conference of their profound loss. Bonnie Burns and her son Gregory were both murdered in the James Smith Cree Nation. Mr. Arcand is Miss Burns' brother.
She was a great woman. Her life was cut short. Gregory's life was cut short. But as a family, we're going to carry on. We're going to carry on and get through this terrible tragedy that nobody wanted, nobody asked for.
Within the past few minutes, one of the two suspected killers, Miles Sanderson, has been taken into custody. BBC News. The UN Security Council says it is deeply concerned by the worsening drought in Somalia and called for increased international support for the country. The Security Council said the drought was a sobering warning. Speaking at a separate World Health Organization news conference, its Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus called for help to be stepped up immediately.
Parts of Somalia are projected to fall into famine in the very near future, unless there is an urgent scale-up in humanitarian assistance. Millions more people in the other parts of the country are facing extreme hunger, and it's likely that many people have already starved to death. Somalia and its neighbors in the Greater Horn of Africa, as well as the countries of the Sahel region, need the world's help, and they need it now.
Weather forecasters in the United States have warned that high winds and rising temperatures have raised the risk of wildfires in large parts of the west of the country. The National Weather Service says dangers have increased in Montana, Oregon, California, Idaho and Washington state. A continuing heat wave has left thousands of households without power. British police say a man in his 40s has been arrested in connection with war crimes committed during civil wars in Liberia that began in late 1980s and left 250,000 people dead. He was arrested during a raid in the city of Newcastle. The former president of Liberia, Charles Taylor, is serving a 50-year sentence in a British prison. Switzerland has summoned China's ambassadors to Bern following the publication last week of a UN report listing serious human rights abuses in Xinjiang. The Swiss Foreign Ministry says the best way to preserve its interests and the respect for the fundamental rights was to conduct a critical and constructive dialogue with Beijing. Human Rights Watch described the findings as groundbreaking. BBC News.